years of unbroken democracy, we bring this issue to the table. The Buhari-led administration also clocks too. How has the economy fared under his watch, and how can the positive effects of a democratic environment be harnessed for economic growth and development? This is Business News. You are welcome. It is a total package again today with our representation of the week in Soundbites, new words to learn, and news around the globe.
The Central Bank of Nigeria has confirmed its intention to sustain interventions between the interbank and bureau de change segments of the market until a rates convergence and liquidity is reached. Spokesman of the Apex Bank, Isaac Okorafor, pointed out that the current policy of the bank and the cooperation of all key players would check the unwholesome activities of speculators. Analysts posit that there has been significant improvement in the foreign exchange rates since the CBN commenced the intervention program. The Bureau of Public Enterprises says it is working with the Nigeria Stock Exchange to define modalities for the listing of privatized government firms on the capital market. Privatization, according to the Nigeria Stock Exchange, is a catalyst for economic growth in addition to fostering economic inclusiveness. Nigeria's capital market is described by experts as having depth and capacity that is yet to be explored. From the global scene, oil prices dipped Monday amidst concerns that the cutting of ties with Qatar by top crude exporter Saudi Arabia and other Arab states could hamper the global deal to reduce oil production. Hostilities between Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Bahrain and Qatar pushed Brent crude to trade down at $49.65.
Now, how does a particular system of governance impact economic development? A sweeping consideration of this indicates that while most poor countries are dictatorship, most rich countries are democratic. Researchers, however, say that prominent exceptions do not allow for a hard-cast conclusion on this matter. A development economist and an international business strategist, Dr. Anthony Chibo Christopher, offers perspectives on this. Our guest on this segment is Dr. Anthony Chibo Christopher, a development economist and an international business strategist. Let's begin by having you establish what you feel is the link between a particular form of government and economic growth and development.
Okay, does democracy lead to economic development, or does economic development begot democracy? Or better still, is the level of democracy practiced in a society proportional to the economic development the society will experience? Sorry, but scholars and extant literature have no consensus on this yet. I say that because, yes, most of the rich, almost all the rich countries in this world we have, developed countries, have responsive democracies. But we have examples that do not allow for a scientific conclusion in this matter, such as states in the Gulf, who are very rich, but they are what? Autocracies. And because of such examples of the Gulf states, and you go further in history, as in Spain, Spain had tremendous economic development under Franco. You go furthermore to places like Suharto of Indonesia. Indonesia had so much economic development under a dictator called Suharto. So you see there's a balance. You have examples, scientific examples of democracies leading to abundance of economic development. You also have examples of autocracies leading to abundance of development. In development economics, there's a theory called the modernization theory that says that eventually every democracy will, or should I say, economic development will lead to democratic rule. Hello, but we have instances of democracies that came about in societies that had nothing to do with the economy whatsoever. So you can see there's a battle among scholars as to how to reach a consensus, and the jury is still out. However, I would say that while there are examples of democracies and autocracies bringing about economic development, you find that it is the substance of what happens that leads to economic development, even if it can happen under both, which is the freedom to invest, freedom to speak, freedom to take risk, protection under a rule of law, protection of investment. Now, these things are imbibed in democracies. In some cases, they are available in some autocracies too. It is these things that allow for economic development. Once these things are available in each case, you find that the economy prospers and it grows.
Are you, in other words, saying that no advantages are inherent in a democratic government in terms of furthering economic development?
In the short term, in my opinion, there isn't any scientific finding for anybody to conclude that a democracy has an advantage over an autocracy when it comes to economic development. Purely academic and scientific. However, I'd like to add that these freedoms that bring about innovation, freedom to invest, and all the freedoms that we get in the democracy are sustainable in a democracy, and I do not think they are that sustainable in an autocracy, because in every autocracy, one day every autocracy will cease to be in power. And that in itself is an uncertainty. And an economic environment born in one kind of uncertainty, be it a very long-term uncertainty, cannot be equal to an economic environment born in a democracy where the system of government and the protections of civil rights under the government is known. And so that is where I see the difference. The advantage a democracy will have over an autocracy. While in the democracy, we know that our vote counts. We know that we are responsible. The government is responsive to what we say, and it will always be like that in a democracy. In an autocracy, yes, we may still have the same liberties. We can invest. Nobody's disturbing our innovation. But one day, we know that the autocracy is not going to be there forever. And that will one day change to some kind of self-rule or whatever kind of rule. And that in itself is an uncertainty. So I personally would say that is the disadvantage an autocracy has over a democracy in the sense of economic development. But in the short term, scientifically speaking, there isn't any proof that one over the other. Because like I've said, there are arguments that an autocracy allows for those difficult decisions, economic decisions, to be made that a democracy wouldn't be able to make. So autocracy makes it because nobody checks. The checks and balances are not there, and so the necessary decisions, difficult and painful, that are supposed to be made for an economy to grow from point A to point B are made faster, and therefore economic growth is seen. So that's an advantage. But I've also seen autocracies that are belligerently very evil and bring about poverty, widespread poverty, and mass growth of underdevelopment. So that is two arguments. But in a democracy also, it can also be said that because of the of the respect of opinion of all, decisions that ought to be made to bring about economic development as fast as possible are slow. Very slow to come by because everybody's opinion has to be taken care of. And sometimes the slowness and the disagreement brings about strife. Strife brings about frustration, and frustration brings about conflict within a democracy. And instead of going on the trajectory of economic development, you're going in the trajectory of war. And that's in a democracy too.
Has Nigeria in her 18 years of unbroken democracy been able to harness the advantages in a democratic environment to further her economic development?
Now, we are very fortunate to be in a democracy, and everything must be done to keep that democracy. I would say yes. It is because we're in a democracy that I believe there is freedom to innovate. It is because we're in a democracy that we can say what we believe to be true. Everybody has a voice in our country as to why the economy is bad. That is not possible in an autocracy. And therefore, the fact that I can contribute from wherever I am to the discourse as to how to improve the economy of my country is a democratic virtue. And therefore, I think our country, to that extent, has harnessed the fruits of democracy towards economic development. Yes, we've got quagmire. We have some bottlenecks in the decision-making process. For the right decisions to be made, the people with the right skills have to be in the right places. Now, democracy tends to get there. It will eventually get there, but it doesn't always get there as fast as one would want it to be. So we have a lot of stones to turn, but I believe that it's all positive. We're getting there. We're having these kind of discussions. The government is doing what it can. They do certain things. The people say they don't like it. It's a responsive government. Nigeria has had, in its democratic rule, responsive governments. And the degree to which the government is responding to the people is increasing. Therefore, our democracy is improving.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Now, to offer practical perspectives on democracy and economic development, I have in the studios are guests who functioned in strategic capacities at the very onset of the democratic dispensation in Nigeria, which has endured for 18 years. Our guest is former Governor of Imo State and former Minister of Commerce and Industry, Chief Achike Udenwa. Welcome to Business News.
Thank you.
Now, you were Imo State Governor between 1999 and 2007, and also Minister of Commerce and Industry 2008 to 2010. So in other words, for the first 11 years of this period of democracy, you were in active governance. Yes. Can we start by having you share with us what the experience was, how democracy imparted on governance?
Well, you know, when we came in 1999, when we came in as governors, we were just taking over from the military after a very long spell of military rule. If you can remember, we've been under military rule from 1970, at least after the Civil War from 1970, with some little intervention in 1979 and another little intervention in 1992. But all along it had been military. So it was very challenging to us. We had to start putting down the institutions of government. We had to start looking at the economic development of the country. We had to start bringing back life to business and restoring confidence in business. So it was quite challenging at the time.
Okay, from your trend, it is obvious that you do have the belief that economic development should thrive better in a democracy.
Yeah, definitely it will. It does, definitely. The reasons are very obvious. One is that you have investor confidence in a democratic dispensation, both local investors and foreign investors. They would like to deal with a democratic government, and you have more of a stability in policies. It's not just a question of today you have this policy in place, tomorrow another policy comes in. Under a military regime, it can change overnight. But major policies under a democratic rule have to go through due process. It has to go through the, maybe at the federal level, go through the National Assembly, or at the state level, go through the House of Assembly. It is something and that takes time, takes a process. And you also even have public hearings before these laws are made. But under a military regime, you just wake up and hear there is a decree. So there is no consistency in policy. Therefore, the long-term investors find it difficult to invest under a military regime. They find it easier under a democratic rule, where they are sure there will be consistency of policy for some time.
Talking about consistency in policies, incidentally, that seemed to be a point that many consider a sore one, even within a democracy. How consistent have policies been in this stretch of a period we've had democratic rule in Nigeria?
Yeah, you see, when you say there are policies that can be changed by executive orders, which can change overnight, maybe even departmental change could occur. These are minor day-to-day policies. But when we talk of strategic policies, like you are saying, what happens when a foreigner brings in his money? How does he repatriate his profit? How does he repatriate his capital, if need be? These are long-term policies, and such policies are born to be scrutinized and born to be put into law, and it takes a lot of process. It takes a lot of time. There is a process in doing it, but under a military regime, there is no process. It just maybe the Supreme Military Council wakes up and says, "This is what we want." Even the president himself, the head of state, can just say, "This is what happens," and it happens. So that's the difference.
Okay, now, in these 18 years of unbroken democracy, what would you consider as the high points, the pluses for economic development in Nigeria?
Well, okay, within this period, you see, we have come through a lot of, would I say, changes. We have come through a lot of new thinkings, you know, in ways of doing business, in ways of industrializing. And you can see that things are becoming more stable. Like, let's put it this way. Before, you can see that we didn't have these mobile phones, for example. These are means of communication. Under the present democratic dispensation, we came about these new technologies. And these new technologies have also helped business, have also helped us, our economy to grow. There are many other things that have come in during the period of democratic dispensation. Look at the way our ports are run. Look at the way our imports are handled. Look at the way our industries are established. The laws governing industrial establishments and the rest have all changed. Most of them have changed over the time based on current experiences. So we have done quite a lot during this period. Just recently, you were hearing of the petroleum. Just about 2 days ago that the petroleum...
yesterday, actually.
Yes, about yesterday or 2 days ago, that it was passed after a long time. And it went through a lot of process under a democratic dispensation. If it were under military, it wouldn't have gone on through everything it had gone through. This one, even you had to consider the local communities where the oil is produced. You can consider all the investors in the industry. You can consider other stakeholders. So a lot has happened. This wouldn't happen on the military regime. It will just be an overnight issue, and you bring out the law, and that law may not stand the test of time. So I think we are breathing more fresh air, business-wise, under a democratic rule.
Okay, now a major quarrel with democracies in terms of development is there has been this age-long argument that the cost of conducting elections and the cost of governance is quite a drawback in democracies. What's your take on that?
Yes, I do agree completely. We could do things cheaper than we are doing now. You see, we copied the American system, the presidential system, without thinking of our local peculiarities. America can fund a lot of things, which we can't fund. Recently, there's also been suggestions that we should not have the Senate and the House of Rep, that we should combine them. And I do agree we can combine them and have just one house that represents the whole Nigerians. And you see, even the executive itself is not helping matters. If you go to some states now, you have 30, 40 commissioners, you have 100 special advisors. I don't think the way we are now, our level of development can absorb this. We can cut down the cost of governance. And again, in most cases, it is even, I can even say that some of those appointments are part of poverty alleviation, because in a country where there is no employment, so they are providing employment to people. But that should not be.
This administration, in all fairness, actually try to contract the number of such offices.
Yes, please.
In that regard,
we can do with less than the number we are doing with now. Even I even extend it to the civil service. I used to tell them when I was a minister, you could do with less than this number. We are in an age of automation, an age of digital age, so to say. You don't need so many people. Look, once I visited a country, I think it was Slovakia I went to. If you went to the offices, the ministries, you will see 2 or 3 people in the office. They are doing all the job.
Most of the transactions are which this country is on a path to driving.
Yes, please. You don't need, even if you need something from the ministry, you don't need to go to the ministry. You can contact the ministry by internet. You don't need to go there. So actually, I believe that we can do a lot. But considering the level of unemployment, some of these things are done to provide employment for people.
Okay, now let us look at the role of states in driving economies. Most times when issues of development are being talked about, there seem to be so much attention focused on the center.
Yep.
You were a governor for 2 terms. So how strategic are sub-regional governments in driving economies? Oh,
very, very strategic. In fact, that's where most things are necessary. At the local level, because at the local level, in a state setup, the state knows its own resources, the state knows what it can produce best, the state knows what the local environment looks like. So I think a lot can be done better at the state level. It is part of what you hear people talking about restructuring and all that. There is need to unbundle the federal government. The federal government is taking so much it cannot control. But if you let the states and maybe the local governments look at this as better, they will be more efficient. at that local level, because they know the environment, they know the type of people they have, they know what their people need. So they will be a lot better. So I agree with you that at the federal level, most of these things should actually be decentralized.
There is a responsive move to these issues. The Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is targeting growth outside oil.
Yes, I do agree. I'm coming to that. Now, what I'm trying to say is that we should be able to have such focus outside oil, and not when oil picks up, we say we are out of recession, everybody goes home and sleeps. Now, I give you an example. When I was the Minister of Commerce and Industry, I looked at it. What is the long-term contribution my ministry could make to economic growth? I took a look at the whole productive sectors of the economy, the rich sectors of the economy, which must be addressed, because to me, no matter what you do, you must address agriculture, you must address manufacturing, you must address solid minerals. These are the three very key areas in the rich sector of the economy. So I said, okay, fine, manufacturing is my own, it's under me. What can we do? Then we took a review of how to increase production, how to increase local consumption, and then how to reduce imports. So we came out with this program of patronized made in Nigerian goods. We did a lot of work there. We launched it in the 6 states of the federation, 6 zones of the federation. The main launcher was done in Abuja here at Eagle Square by then the Vice President, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. So we did all that, but after we left office, it died.
But so much is being done now in that regard.
I've just heard the other day that they're going to launch patronized made in Nigerian goods. I said, okay, thank God. Whether it is relaunching or because it has already been launched, whether they want to relaunch it is good, but the important thing is to carry it out.
Yes, thank you very much, Chief Achike Udenwa. I'm afraid that time is always not so friendly on this program, but I'm sure within this short time you have been able to give some valuable insights into an economy in a democracy. Thank you very much for coming on our program.
Thank you, viewers.
Our guests on this segment has been a former governor of Imo State and former Minister of Commerce and Industry. The program Business News continues with the next segment. Stand by now for other segments of Business News.
We cannot continue to be the world's biggest market for anybody who wants to sell anything. We need to come to the trade table as equal partners, selling as well as buying. That's trade.
It's the best result we've had for the last 3 or 4 quarters, and is a sign that we're moving out of recession.
That's our program for today. Do join us again next week for a fresh package.